everyone. We're going to begin 3.4 today. On the first part of this 3.4, we're going to learn how to divide polynomials using long division. In our next section, we're going to be learning how to do a little shortcut, but we have to learn how to do long division first with our polynomials. Okay? So first of all, let's just review how do we actually divide numbers, because that's going to help us divide polynomials. If you recall, if we're going to take 6 into 83, we'd first take 6 into 8, our first number here, and that would go 1 time. So we'd put 1 above 8. And then we multiply 1 times 6, we give us 6, and we subtract. 8 minus 6 is 2. Then we would bring this 3 down, right? And then that'd give us 23, and then we would take 6 into 23. And that would go that would go 3 times. So 3 times 6 would be 18. And then we'd subtract 18 to get 5. And 5 would be my remainder. So we'd have 13 with the remainder of 5. And then we would know that this would be, to multiply this back, would be 6 times 13. And then plus my additional remainder of 5, which should give us 83, right? So 6 times 13 would give us that 78 here. Plus our remainder of 5 gives us our 83. So we can always check our division. Same thing over here with our 4 into 24. Now that goes evenly, 24, and we'll have a remainder of 0. And we know if we have a remainder of 0, we know that that means that 6 and 4 are factors of 24. So 4 times 6 are indeed factors of 24. We don't have any remainders. And so that tells us they're factors. Keep that in the back of your head, because that's going to come up with our polynomials. But that's how we're going to tell if we have factors of a polynomial or not, is if our remainder is 0. Okay? So first of all, this is how we're going to do long division of a polynomial. We have to divide first, and then multiply, and then subtract. Okay, same sort of process. This is what it's going to look like. I'm not going to, dwell on this a whole lot because it gets really overwhelming, but this is sort of what it looks like. Okay, so we basically divide our 2x into 6x squared, our first term that we can go the biggest into, just like we did with our numbers, and then we multiply and subtract. Multiply and subtract. Okay, so we're going to get started here. So we're going to divide x cubed plus 5x squared plus 6x plus 9 divided by x plus 3. So I'm going to write this out here. X plus 3 divided into, you have x cubed plus 5x squared plus 6x plus 9. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to find and ask ourselves, how many times we want, x go into x cubed. Okay, so basically, what times x gives me x cubed? And that's going to be x squared. And that's going to go up here above x squared. So we'll kind of line up our terms, kind of like what we do with our numbers. We line up the hundreds or line up the tens. Okay, so then we're going to multiply. And we distribute when we multiply. So x squared times x is x cubed. And x squared times 3. So we kind of like a distributive property. We have to multiply by both terms. That's going to be plus 3x squared. Okay, then we're going to subtract, just like we would in regular long division. But when we subtract, we have to subtract our entire thing. So both terms, we're going to subtract both terms. So you basically change the signs. Okay, that's going to be the same thing as subtracting, as we're changing the signs. So if we're subtracting, we have to change the sign and kind of distribute that subtraction term. Okay, so we're going to change the signs of both of those terms, and then we can add. Okay, change signs and then add. So this is going to cancel out. 5x squared plus a negative 3x squared is going to be a 2x squared. Then we're going to bring our next term down, just like we did in our long division. So plus 6x. And we're going to start all over again. Okay, so we can take this term x. And what times x gives me 2x squared? And that's going to be 2x, right? So I'm going to put this over here. So I'm going to go plus 2x. And I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm only going to multiply 2x by x. So 2x times x is going to give me 2x squared. And then 2x times 3 gives me a positive 6x. And then I'm going to subtract, okay, by changing signs. So again, I change signs and add. That's how I subtract, okay? So when I do that, I'm going to be left with, that goes to 0, and that goes to 0. Look at that. And I'm going to bring down this 9. And that's going to be 0, right? Because anything times 0, get to 0 is going to be to 0. So that's just going to be 0 here, okay? So my leftover is going to be my quotient up here is what my answer is going to be x squared plus 2x plus my remainder, okay? And a lot of times we can write it as 9 plus 9 divided by my divisor, x plus 3, like this, okay? You can also see sometimes it will be written as x squared plus 2x, and then r, remainder of 9. Sometimes it will be written like that, okay? And a lot of times it will be written like this. If I multiply these back together, x plus 3 times x squared plus 2x, and then add my remainder, then I should get that same dividend back again, just like we did with our numbers, okay? And that's how we do our long division, all right? It's a little bit tedious at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's not super hard, okay? So let's go ahead and do one more. So the most important thing here is a little box over here. Oh no, that's not it right over here. One thing you have to remember with long division is you have to make sure you have a position for every term. So if I'm going to divide 2x plus 3, this is very important. So write this down somewhere. I have to have a position for every power. So 8x cubed plus, and I'm going to have to make sure I have a 0x squared plus a 0x, and then I can have my plus 27. Okay, so make sure I have a position for every one of those powers. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and ask myself, you know, what times 2x will give me 8x cubed? And that's going to be 4x squared. So I'll put that up here, 4x squared. And I can multiply 4x squared times 2x gives me 8x cubed. And then 4x squared times 3 gives me a plus 12x squared, right? Now you can see why we have to have that placeholder. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and subtract by changing signs and then adding those together. So that will become 0, and this will become a negative 12x squared. And I can bring back down this plus 0x and start all over again. Okay. So what times 2x gives me negative 12x squared is going to be a minus 6x. And I can go ahead and multiply that now. So negative 6x times 2x gives me a negative 12x squared. So you'll notice every time I multiply that first term, I should have exactly this so that when I subtract, it goes to 0. Okay. Negative 6x times 3 should give me a negative 18x. And I'm going to go ahead and change my signs. That becomes a positive. That becomes a positive. And add those. So that becomes 0. And this becomes a positive 18x. I'll bring down my last term here. Plus 27. And then I'd start all over again. So what number times 2x gives me an 18x? That will be a positive 9x. Or excuse me, just a positive 9. Right? So 9 times 2 gives me 18x. And then 9 times 3 gives me a positive 27. And you'll notice here, when I subtract, I get 0. So this means, if you remember from our numbers, that means we have no remainder, which means these are factors of each other. Okay? And look in this box up here. When the remainder is 0, you can use the result of long division to write this in factored form. Okay? So this is my quotient right here. Okay, but if I can also use this to write this in factored form, and we're going to use this when we start solving. So right here, factored form, because remember how 4 times 6 was 24. So we're going to factored form. In factored form, we're going to start using this to solve. So 2x plus 3 was what I divided by times my quotient, 4x squared minus 6x plus 9. So this is factored form. And I can start factoring my polynomial, and then I could take this part here, which is a quadratic, and use that a quadratic formula or some other method and factor that further to find all my zeros. So kind of keep that in your back pocket and start to pay attention to that, because that's how we're going to factor our polynomials, is using division. Okay? Okay. So now you might want to try this. Pause the video here, divide this, and then come back and see how you do, and see if you do pretty well. You might get stuck a little bit, and that's okay. You might have to, kind of fast forward the video, see how you do. That's how we learn a little bit. Okay? Okay, so we're dividing by x plus 2 into, make sure we have all of our powers. We do. X cubed minus 4x squared plus 2x minus 3. Okay, so our first one here is, what do I need to multiply x by to get x cubed? That's going to be x squared. So x squared times x is x cubed. And then x squared times 2 is positive 2x squared. And then I'm going to go ahead and change my signs to subtract, and then I can add those. So that goes to 0, and this becomes negative 6x squared. Bring this down, plus 2x. And we're going to start all over again. What times x gives me 6x squared? That should be a negative 6x squared, actually. So it's going to be negative 3x. So negative 3x times x is negative 6. Oh, excuse me, negative 6x. Oh, look at that. Almost lost it there. There we go. Okay, so that should be negative 6x y's. So negative 6 times x is negative 6x squared. And negative 6 times 2 is a negative 12x. I'm going to go ahead and change my signs. Bada boom, bada bang. And that will become 0, and this will become 14x. Bring down my negative 3. And start all over again. What times x gives me 14x? That's going to be plus 14. 14 times x is 14x. And 14 times 2 is plus 28. And change my sign. Bada boom, bada bang. And we're going to get 0 there and 25 here. So I should have x squared minus 6x plus 14 with the remainder of 25. Or I could also write this as x squared minus 6x plus 14 plus 25 divided by my divisor, x plus 2. So they might ask you for it in a couple different ways on the Excels and even on SATs. So you might want to be able to write both ways. Okay. So your assignment is 3.1 Excel. Don't forget to attach your work. Bring your questions to your Zoom meetings. Also, don't hesitate to take some pictures and send them to me if you need to as well. Okay. All right. You guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.